Hey folks, Steve Adubato here. It is our pleasure to welcome Dr. Robi Ludwig, who is a psychotherapist and author of a book called Your Best Age Is Now. Is that true?
Yes, absolutely.
Even if someone says, wait a minute, they're lying about their age, some of us are like, hey, really? You know, you don't want to be that honest. Or we think back, it was better that now?
Well, I think for the people who lie about their age, it's because of their concern of how other people will experience their age. I mean, I know that was the case for me. I was on a job interview for television, and they asked me my age, and I told them this was several years ago, and I remember thinking, I don't think that's legal, but it's not legal, but I told them because I was always honest about my age, but I had a concern. I was like, what will my age mean to them? Will it knock me out of the ballpark? Is this really it? And it really kind of set me on this journey of what midlife means to people, the negative kind of script we subscribe to because of our culture. And I'm so glad I did research and found lots of positive aspects of this time of life.
Who'd you talk to?
Well, for my book, I talked to Suzanne Summers, I talked to Kathy Lee Gifford, I talked to Hoda Kotb, I talked to Joan London, Kate White, all these amazing women who had a lot of wise, sage information to share about what it's like to arrive at midlife, some of the concerns they had. For Kathy Lee, she's very spiritual. So she talked about how her spiritualism really opened up seeing the world in a different way and finding meaning in a different way, which we know if you find meaning, that's where your mental health comes from. That's where your physical health comes from. But we live in a culture that tells us that youth is where it's at. We have an over-idealization of youth. And
Misplaced?
So it is misplaced. It is. I mean, I think there's a fantasy subscribed to that if you're young, then you have a lot of possibilities ahead of you.
But hold on, before we go any further, why wouldn't we want to tell younger people that?
Well, we should.
But
but
does that, by the zero-sum mentality, there's only so much to go around, therefore there's not much for those who are of a certain age?
That's the problem. So once you leave youth, whenever that time is, the message is, it's over for you. It's a time of loss. It's about what you're losing. You're losing your looks. You're losing your mind. You're losing people being interested in you.
You're losing your, dare I say, in this business of television, which clearly has nothing to do with your ego.
Yeah.
That's a joke.
Right.
You're losing your relevance.
Right. People won't notice you.
You're losing our sense of being relevant in the world?
Yes, and I was talking to this Harvard psychologist, and I said, well, what about when people tell you they stop being recognized, they stop being noticed, and they feel irrelevant? And she said, Robi, that's true of everybody. And when you think about it, there is a lot of truth to that. Think about the selfies. Everybody documenting everything, which I think can be a great thing. I don't have a problem with telling our youth the future's ahead of them. It is. What I do have a problem with is telling people who are at midlife and beyond that there isn't that same future. Because of science, midlife is really a new time of life. And if we give up on ourselves, which is really the message, then we're wasting this time of life where we're wise, we're more confident in many ways, we know ourselves better, we can handle conflict better, we can read people better. We see the positive side of life because of the changes going on in our brain, and all of this information was really nowhere to be found. And I wanted people to have this information in a book so they could say, oh my gosh, I'm not decompensating at 45 and beyond. There really is a lot of positive things going on for me, and I want to use that to my advantage.
So, Robi, let me ask you this. How does what you are saying and the research in this book comport with the whole concept of retiring at whatever age? Because you're talking about the opposite. You're talking about new possibilities, new opportunities, and someone saying, well, I'm thinking I want to pack it in and stop working at 64 or whatever that number is. And you're saying, wait a minute, you're going to our life expectancy is much longer. Like, what are you going to do?
Right. And there was a new study that came out saying that people who retired early ended up not living as long. Listen, if somebody says to me their goal is to retire early, fine. You know, some people want to do that, and then they find a second life of doing something else.
But do you say, and do what? Does it matter, and do what? Like, say someone says, I'm just going to do nothing. Does that matter? Or
yes, that would matter in my private practice. I would say that's not healthy, because people at midlife and beyond really need to find their purpose, really need to do something that they feel is meaningful for their life in order to feel fulfilled, in order to feel happy, and in order to be healthy. So if someone wants to retire and do something artistically, great. Travel the world, fine. But the economic truth is most of us are not going to be able to do that. And so I think it's really important for corporations to understand, let's not get rid of our older people so fast.
What's all the mandatory? I know of some companies there's mandatory retirement at 65 years old.
Right. Because I think there's something called salaryism. And also, older workers or people in midlife have to bring their best game. They need to bring their A game, because there is this judgment. If you're earning a lot of money and maybe you've gotten a little comfortable, the two is not a, the two combined together is not a winning combination.
I want some of the specific, tangible advice that you offer that I really like here. React to some of this. How about letting go of stress to create a more balanced life? How?
Yeah, well, meditate, exercise. Think about what you're saying to yourself. We really need to edit what we're saying so that if we get overwhelmed, we need to stop and think about the thoughts that we're having. How realistic are they? Are we treating ourselves well? Are we eating right? All of these things really do matter in terms of how good we feel about ourselves. And really about stress management, are you turning to friends? That's what I talk about. We really need to reboot during midlife, and midlife is very similar to adolescence, where it's a stop and pause moment. We want to figure out who we are. And so it's really the time to think about what's good for me, and to pose those questions for yourself so that you're alive and energetic. Listening to music is wonderful. Think about what your younger self would say to your older self. All really important. Adolescents turn to their friends in order to reduce their stress level. That's something adults sometimes forget, the power of touch, the power of friendship, the power of spirituality. All of these things reduce our stress level.
How about looking at our love life and our relationships?
There's a lot of misconceptions when it comes to relationships, especially for women and men. For example, this is the time that a lot of women initiate divorces. And when you think about midlife crisis, we think about a man choosing a younger woman and leaving their marriage. Not really statistically the case. Women will often look at their relationships, I'm sure men too, and say, can I be happy in this relationship? And if the answer is no, then they often feel like they have enough life ahead of them to make a different choice. Not necessarily what I recommend, but relationships make us feel gratified to love and be loved in the right way.
And if you're not getting it,
if you're
haven't
not
gotten it for a long time,
yeah, then explore it with a professional, because it's a very complicated process.
Stop there and someone says, hey, it's just the way it is, leave it alone. This is my lot in life, you say?
I say you have to be proactive about what you want and working towards what you want. You can't be passive. You really need to be aggressive towards pursuing the type of relationship you want, the type of work life you want, how you want to look. But I think what we need to know is to not give up on any area of our life, because once we do, once we accept that, then we can anticipate a lot of losses.
Is there a self-fulfilling prophecy there?
I do. I think so. Yes. Once you start saying there's nothing left for me, we make that true. It's called confirmation bias. We tend to make true what we believe is true.
You're good.
Thank you.
Your best age is now, Dr. Robi Ludwig. Great stuff. Thank you so much for helping a lot of people. Appreciate it.